Mishna Nazir, Parak Dalet, Chapter 4, Mishnah Vav, Mishnah 6. Ho'ish mader es benoi benazir. A man can make a vow that his son will become a nazir. You can make your son a nazir. Ve'ein ho'ish mader es benoi benazir. But a woman cannot do so. She cannot make her son into a nazir. Now, it's important to know a couple of things about this halacha. First of all, the whole ability to do this is based on a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. A halacha given to Moshe at Har Sinai. There's nothing in the Torah about it, no seemingly allusion in the Torah about it. It's called halacha Moshe Sinai. It's part of the Torah Shabbal Peh, straight Torah Shabbal Peh, that a man can do this, but a woman cannot do it. That's number one. The way that he makes a son a nazir is by saying, "You are hereby a nazir," or "So-and-so, my son, is a nazir." He can say, directly talking to the son, "You are a nazir," or "So, my son, so," or to say, "My son, so-and-so, is a nazir." He may do this only as long as his son is not yet 13 years old and has not grown 2 pubic hairs. After that, the son is an adult, and his father can no longer make him a nazir. Now, when we say that he makes his son a nazir, that means that when the son has to observe Naziris. When the Naziris term is over, who brings the karbanis? The father. Mm-hmm. And if the son becomes tamei from a dead person in the middle of it, so he has to go through the process in order to restart his Naziris. He has to bring sacrifices. Who brings those sacrifices? His father. And then the son starts over again. Okay, so these are these are those basic halachas. Now, another very important halacha is that if, let's say, the father says to his son, "Sonny, you're a nazir," and Sonny says, "No way," or his mom says, "No way," or it seems like if other relatives say, "No way," then it doesn't happen. So, Ketzad, the Mishnah says, how is this? Gilach, if he cut his hair, meaning the son himself went and cut his hair, okay? Or the relative was out and cut his hair, meaning the father said, "You're a nazir." So what was the reaction of everybody? They whipped out a scissor and snipped his hair, which means they're not agreeing to this. Whether this child did it himself, his relatives say, I don't see anybody explaining which relatives we're talking about, like how far do relatives go? But I can assume it means his mother, could probably be siblings. Or Micha Oishimichu Kraivav, or let's say the son protested, or the relatives protest. They didn't go cutting his hair, but they protested. Then this is going to now cancel the Naziris, which means if, let's say, this son started the Naziris, right? And then what happened was the relatives hear about it and they cancel it, then what happens? It becomes nullified. It becomes nullified from here on. It's not nullified retroactively. It's nullified from that point on. Now, what's interesting is they say here, for the protest to be effective, the boy or relative must protest immediately upon hearing about the father's vow. Once they hear it, they have to react. If they not immediately protest, or if the boy starts observing the Naziris willingly, the Naziris can no longer be nullified. So it's you got a short window there. You hear about it, you got to react. Okay? Now, and being that what we just said now is this protest does not work retroactively, but it works from when they hear about it. Meaning, like you say, they hear about it, got to protest right away. And if they did so let's say the child was already, let's say the Naziris already had started. Nobody knew the Naziris had started, but the Naziris had started. Right? And the father who made his son a nazir was being very conscientious, and he already separated the animals for the sacrifices for when his son completes the term of naziris, like we had yesterday with the woman and the husband. Okay, so that's going to be the situation here. Gilach oishagochu karevav, the child cut his hair, or the relatives cut his hair. Micha shemichu karevav. He protested, or the relatives protested, and this all happened immediately upon when they heard about it. And as we said, it doesn't work retroactively to take off the Naziris. It's only from then on. So says the Mishnah. And the case is, as we said, the father had already designated sacrifices for the son when the son completes the term of Naziris. So if let's say he had an animal or animals that were designated, what they're going to go for, right? That's what we had that case yesterday. The way that it works when you're sanctifying an animal for a carbon is you designate it for that carbon. So in this case, he had designated the animals for the carbonis. All right, so what happened? The father, correct. The father did that. So now what happens to those animals? They were consecrated for a Nazir. The Naziris was canceled. What do you do with them? Just like yesterday's scenario. So achatas tamus, the sin offering, the animal designated for the sin offering is left to die. V'ha'oila tikrav oila. The burnt offering is offered as a burnt offering. The sin offering has to die because the sin offering can only come if you are obligated. It can't come voluntary. An ola burnt offering could become voluntary. So the animal designated for the ola, that was supposed to be the ola of a Nazir, which was obligatory, but at the end of the day, it can be brought as a voluntary oila. V'ashlamim yikavu shlamim. And the animal designated for the shlamim will be offered as a shlamim. V'ne'achalin l'yoyim echad v'netudim lechem. And because of the fact that this animal started off as a shlamim of a Nazir, it keeps the restrictions of that, even though it's no more for a Nazir, it's voluntary. And instead of being able to be eaten 2 days and a night like a regular shlamim, it can only be eaten for a day and a night. One day means a day and a night, the night following. And the breads that are typically brought by a Nazir when he brings his shlamim are not going to be brought in this case because there is no Nazir to bring them. When there is no Nazir to bring them, they aren't brought. Now, let's say the case was the father did not designate animals, but he took money, and he designated the money for the sacrifices of his son who was a Nazir, but they weren't specified. Then that money now falls for the voluntary burnt offerings that are offered on behalf of the Jewish people when the Mizbeach is having a slow day. There's not carbon. There's no carbonas on the mizbeach at that point of time. So they go to the chest that has these monies and they buy a carbon in order to make sure that the mizbeach has carbonas being offered. That's when you have the money that was not designated. Mois mufarashin. Let's say the monies were designated, and as we said yesterday, when you have designated money, when you use the money designated for the chatas, you buy the animal with that money. The sanctity of a chatas now goes from the money to the animal. So Demei Chatas, let's say the money, so let's talk about each monies, then they were designated. Demei Chatas, the money's up for the Chatas, Yachal Yamemelech. They have to go to the Dead Sea. They have to be destroyed. Just like if it would be the actual animal would be left to die, the money for the Chatas has to be destroyed. We may not have, no one may have benefit from them, but if they do, there's no liability of Me'ilah. The laws of Me'ilah, which means you got to bring a sacrifice as an atonement, you have to pay a certain amount of money. That does not apply here because since the monies were not meant to be used, are actually not meant to be used for anything, they're actually to be destroyed. Therefore, based on the pasuk by Me'ilah that says, Kache Hashem, the thing sanctified for God, this is not called sanctified for God because they're not going to be used, they're going to be destroyed, and therefore there is no Me'ilah. And as we learned yesterday, prohibition against benefiting is a rabbinic prohibition. Demei oila, the money designated for the burnt offering, yaviu oila. You use that money to buy an ola, a voluntary ola, umayah ben behen. And because those monies are meant for something that will be used as a carbon, me'ilah will apply by them if you use them. Demei shlamim, the monies for the shlamim, yaviu shlamim, they should be used to buy a shlamim, a voluntary shlamim, and that shlamim will that shlamim will be eaten for 1 day, which means a day and a night, and they don't eat the breads that typically come along with the Nazir when he's bringing his sacrifices at his completion of his Naziris. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.